I went to VBS as a kid.
VBS. Bible Man. Did you ever watch Bible Man?
This was Veggie Tales.
I love Veggie Tales, but did you ever watch
Bible Man's like the Avenger.
Is that the superhero
He's the
guy?
Christian Avenger.
That's what I thought. I was thinking,
the yellow
the guy from Charles in Charge.
What?
Williams.
I don't know.
I was not aware of Charles in Charge.
The not Charles, but his was it his brother? Whatever. I think he like went on to make some Bible hero character guy.
Okay.
What the heck?
I'll bring the facts next time.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Together Talks. I'm here with my main man, Hagen Harrison.
What's up?
The man behind the AV, owner and CEO of Brad Smith Media, Mr. Bradley Smith himself. Shout out to Brad. All the horns, all the horns.
Yeah, all of them.
And today, we have the great honor of having our great friend, our fellow Together student pastor from all the way from Mount Vernon, Heidelberg's very own Kade Pierce.
That's a lot of greats. Shout out to Josh. Shout out.
Shout out to Kade.
I think we've done enough shout outs for the rest of how long we do this.
Well, let's shout this out real quick. Somebody here made a very grave decision this past weekend that we want to celebrate.
What is this?
So shout out to Hagen for proposing to his girlfriend. Pop 'em, boys! Yeah! Woohoo!
Okay.
Okay.
Congratulations. We're going to start calling Kade Bethany.
There it is.
Direction I can't
It's
read.
lit. It's
What
lit.
the heck?
I was
Direction.
expecting smaller. This is going to be way easier to clean up.
Yes.
I'm cool with this.
Oh, my gosh.
So yeah, man, shout out to Hagen, shout out to Clara, the future Harrisons.
That's
man,
crazy.
crazy weekend.
Yeah, dude.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it. We're both excited, I think.
Oh man, Brad got to be on the scene, in the field. He was.
I wasn't alone, Joshua.
I hid behind a wall, you know.
There was some killer tunes.
There were tunes for a
And then
little
I
bit.
just was like straight up destroying props. Boom. Just,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
whole deal.
Yeah,
man.
I was just looking forward to getting my money back for that. But that's
Sorry about
what
that, Hagen. Oh, my bad.
Yeah. So, but anyways, yes.
Oh, gosh.
Massive shout out to you. Awesome
Appreciate
stuff
it.
on the horizon.
Congratulations.
We're very excited. But anyways, my man.
Moving on.
My man.
My man.
How we doing, guys? Everybody good?
Think so. I
Hagen,
guess you want me to take it from here?
I want you to
seem
captain
be,
this ship, my brother.
You want to seem to be kind of stalling. So
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Nah, but yeah, we kind of wanted to have Kade on today because honestly, we probably met for the first time about this time last year, I think. And so you've been an absolute catalyst ever since then. You were all in from the beginning when it comes to things related to Together. And so we wanted to have you on because, you know, like we talked about last month's episode, and this podcast is about getting student ministry leaders and other people in our community to just kind of come and hang out and talk and see how we can work together to enhance and advance the kingdom and, you know, do what we can for student ministries and continue to develop unity and community. So glad to have you with us. I do want to say I am interested in knowing about like your church background and what that was like growing up. 'Cause me and Josh kind of talked about ours last episode. Really just kind of want to see, you know, what was church like for you growing up? What denominations did you go to? What are some things you saw? Pretty much, how did you get to the point where you are today?
For sure. So that's kind of a confusing story. I'll take it and try to hash that out kind of somewhat quickly. I grew up with my parents in a split house. So like one weekend I would be at my mom's and another weekend I'd be at my dad's. And so I kind of grew up in both of their churches, which, if we're being honest, was like polar opposites.
Really?
Like polar opposites. So we got, my mom went to the church on 2nd Avenue, Christ Church, wonderful church. Shout out to Brother Bishop Hanchy and all of them. But my dad went to Church of Christ Church. So we have a charismatic, non-denominational, more Pentecostal side, and then like traditional, no instruments, a cappella music, And so major differences in those two things. You know, there's a funny story one time. Like I was a young guy, probably like 8, and I'd been going to my mom's church more often. And so I was used to like music stars for standing up, clapping, getting involved and all that stuff. And I was at my dad's church this weekend. And so service starts, and I kind of just like was like, you know how you kind of just, especially as a young kid, you just like, you're used to routines. Mm-hmm. I just stood up and started clapping. And the entire
congregation, imagine you were the only one.
The entire congregation was like, and my dad grabbed my shirt tail and yanked me down. It was quite embarrassing. Traumatic scars. No, but you know, both of my parents, my dad and my mom, my stepdad was a huge part in shaping me, and into being the man that I am today. He was a youth pastor for a decade, and so I grew up in both their churches. But you know, I never really had a real, genuine relationship with the Lord at that time. I had an opportunity and went to a summer camp with Life Church, and there's like the first time where I can say like I met with Christ. Like I had an encounter with Christ, and it wasn't long after that. Like 6 weeks after that, I was like, I felt like I was on fire for the Lord. I was actually reading my Bible, and my brother passed away. And so that kind of set me back. It was at that point, like I kind of just disconnected from church.
Yeah.
Like I would go because I was forced to go, but I was not involved and didn't care about being there. And so growing up in church is kind of like it's a weird subject because I was there, but I wasn't there, if that makes any sense. Yeah. Like I'd checked out, and that was the last thing that was on my mind. You know, that's kind of the way that I came up around church.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I like just hearing different perspectives from people. Just because, like, you know, growing up, I didn't really go to church. When I did, it was Baptist. And then when I got saved, it was at a Pentecostal church. And then I moved to Tuscaloosa and joined a non-denominational. So I just like hearing different people's perspectives from different denominations, because a lot of that kind of ties into the heart of Together. Yeah. Just trying to get away from all the denominations, I think, and just trying to get back to the heart of God. And so I'm curious. That's probably a question we're going to ask like every guest on here that we have, just kind of hear their story and where they come from, how they were raised. But
interjection real quick.
Yeah, come on.
Funny story. I ended up actually getting to serve at my dad's church as an interim preaching minister there for like 6 months, probably 3 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, which is wild. You know, going back and kind of seeing all those people that I grew up around, and being able to kind of fill in a position while they were looking for a more permanent role, which was wild.
That is pretty cool though. Yeah. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah.
I thought that this student ministry that you're in now is your first one.
No, so I had that opportunity, so it's like a twice a month thing, every other week, every other Sunday.
Yeah.
I preached for like 6 months.
That's pretty cool, for real.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. I didn't know that. Kind of bouncing from that question to, I guess, more Together related stuff, since this is Together Talks. I am curious, like we said at the beginning, it's probably been about a year or so since we met for the first time. And so I'm curious, like, what made you want to be a part of Together when we first met? Because me and Josh were just kind of two strangers and came to you with this idea. It's like, what about it made you want to be a part of it?
But were you really though? I mean, like, maybe like in a literal sense we were strangers.
Yeah.
Like you just hit me up and we just like met at the best coffee place in town, Bird Dog.
I'm a Lee's loyal
Come on, man. That black coffee from Bird Dog.
I had to try it.
It's so good. It's so good. When you grow up one day.
When I get a little hair on my chest.
That black coffee's where it's at.
I would trust your call on that, since you.
Hey, I love Lee's. I'm not hating on Lee's. I love Lee's. I just love Bird Dog's black coffee. But yeah, dude. So we were strangers in a literal sense, but we had the same heart. And so as soon as I met you guys, it's funny because like I thought I was coming to meet one person, and then I got ambushed.
I'm so sorry.
I didn't think, honestly, it wasn't even planned for you to be there, was it?
I was like, so who's these two bros? No, man, you
up on me.
you kind of like laid your heart out there, And I respected that. You know, I feel like a lot of the conversations I have with people are just like, this is the way it's supposed to be. We're going through the motions. These are the things you say. This is what you say at this time. And I was like, and I'm not that guy. Like, I'm going to have some like real conversations. What's your heart?
Yeah.
Let's feel each other out. Let's have some deeper conversations. Just these little like, you know, chit chat stuff is not really where I find myself being attracted to. And so when you came and you was like laying out your heart, both of you, I think you let Josh kind of just lay that out there. I was like instantly connected because it really portrayed like the type of environment I'm trying to build in my students.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like, man, how much more? And I feel like you guys say that I've been a catalyst in this, and I feel like, man, my youth group is the way it is because you guys have been a catalyst in that. And so like that's what blows my mind. It's like, you know, we're both rubbing shoulders together and we're making fire for each other. And so like a big part about what makes my youth group that I'm honored to be the youth pastor of such a unique thing to me is the fact that they're not typical teenagers. Like typical teenagers click up, group up, get to themselves, and they just find their you know their road to follow, and they go with that crew. But like, man, you come up to the light room and it's like everybody's just chilling with each other. Yeah. There's not the couples over here. You know what I'm saying? There's not the people who are really athletic or, you know, crazy sportsmanship over here. Yeah. It's like we're all just together. And so when you laid that idea out to me, I bought in because I'm like, how much more of an impact could this be if we not only did this in my youth group, but we did this in our community, and what would be the residual effects of that? Yeah. So it's easy to buy into when it's the same heart. Yeah,
that's good stuff.
And kind of what we talked about, I guess it would be the last podcast, is that, you know, we're both non-denom, came from different backgrounds. You're Congregational Methodist over at Mount Vernon. And so one of the deals that me and Hagen saw might be an issue when we're talking to student pastors is like people who are not non-denominational, like if there would be any issues with them buying into Vision. And so all we knew was you guys were Congregational Methodists, and I don't know, we tried to shape it as like, this is not a non-denominational thing. This is just a Jesus and a church thing. Yeah. And you buying into that so quickly, we were like, oh, this is incredible. We might be able to do something cool. And then we did do something cool in April of last year. I say cool.
It was amazing.
It was more than just cool.
Yeah. But I think that's because, man, it's like I just don't like that whole, you know, like when I was getting interviewed for the position, which was like crazy and a long story in itself to talk about. I'm sorry, I know that. It's a crazy story to talk about, man. How like seriously how God lined up, and you know, like I really believe God called me to that place. Yeah. And but that's another story. But like I'm not a Methodist guy. You know what I'm saying? Like the church that I was going to prior to going to Mount Vernon was Christ Church. I mean, we're like, you know, rather charismatic, you know what I'm saying? And so I think that's been a cool wrench to throw into the game, because I'm like, I'm coming there with my appreciation of enthusiasm and zeal, and I think that brings a little something special. But you know, I just this the whole like the Methodist guy. My grandmother introduced me to one time to somebody that was doing some work at her yard, and she was like, he's the minister, he's the Methodist minister. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm a Christian. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm a Christian. Yeah. And so, I get what you're saying, but then again, I'm like, I wanted to interject and throw that in.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's kind of a difficulty, if we're being honest, in our county sometimes, is just the hold that religion and denominations hold over our churches and over our student ministries. So it was really cool to see it kind of work together. And then even as you said, you know, I'm in a Methodist church now, but I'm a Christian. Yeah. Just like you said. Yeah. But yeah, man, we have a ton of love for the Light Room and Mount Vernon and the stuff we've been able to see over the past year. Oh my gracious.
It's mutual.
Yeah. I'm going to let you run because I think we're flowing right into that next little question.
We kind of talked about what brought you on board, and I do like what you said about just the same heart, because that's something I hadn't really thought about, because I think we've kind of run into some issues with, I don't want to say issues, but maybe just, other folks who may be interested, but for whatever reason hold back, or, whether it's due to uncertainty of who we are or what this thing's about. And, if it doesn't start with the heart, then, or maybe that's where it needs to start, is the heart. And so maybe that's something we can start kind of praying towards. Maybe that's like a direction that we can kind of start praying towards moving forward. Because I never even thought about that. Yeah. But, you did come together last year, brought a squad, and, you were all in from the very beginning. And so I am curious, like, what was that experience like, walking into that, because you had really just met us that one time, really. You didn't really know us. We had the same heart for things, but, you trusted us with, bringing in speakers and a worship team, people that's going to, like, lead your kids to Christ and not, elsewhere. It's like, just as a whole, what was your experience like? And I'm not asking this to like gas us up or anything, but I am just curious, because if there is somebody else out there who may be in the same boat as you, where they kind of want to, but they're not sure, like, what would you say to them as far as like wanting to join in the future?
Yeah, man, I think, like, if you look at the people that are surrounded, within your church, with you guys' church, I think you got to just expect competency. Mm-hmm. It's like if it had been something that I'd heard something about, or there would have been some serious doctrinal things that I was worried about, I would have just talked to you about those things. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I know some of the people that go to your church. I've had conversations with Brother James several times, and I mean, I knew that guy's heart was like on point. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And like, if he's signing his name off on it, who am I to like not join forces? Yeah. And so that's what I felt like it was. Like, we're joining forces for the same cause. Like, let's bring students together to know Christ, yes, but let's unite each other past denominational lines. And that's why even after together, we've linked up like 4 other times, and we've been doing stuff with each other because, like, there's not a lot of, I've actually never done an event with another Congregational Methodist church. Really? And that's not like...
Are there any other ones around here? That may be a dumb question.
Yeah, there's Lake out on 84 East. Okay. But like, it's not that... it's not like by design. You know what I'm saying? I tend to kind of like flow more towards the groups that kind of get looked over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's because, like, I find some type of connection with those guys. And so your question about experience... together, man. I knew as soon as we came, you had volunteers at the door, like, ready to welcome us in there, man. And I know how hard that is by itself, just to get volunteers to help out. Yeah. And then my boy Josh is in the lobby, like, hyping folks up. And I'm just sitting there admiring how he was able to do that, because, man, that is not my spiritual gift. Yeah. And as soon as we walked into the sanctuary, I knew that you guys were playing this with excellence, Yeah. And I never once thought otherwise. Like, I was hoping there would be like this huge group of people that showed up. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I could have cared less if there was just 10 folks in there. Yeah. After I got there. Like, from the first session, you knew like God was doing something special. Yeah. Because I think that we were like, not, like, I think the idea behind Together is such an on-time, great thing, but it works because it's connected to his heart. Mm-hmm. And so, like, we tend to overthink and overcomplicate the way ministry should go about, but like, what's his heart want? Yeah. And so I think it was a great experience, man. I saw all the students coming and just flooding the altars, us as leaders with them, mm-hmm. Shedding some dead weight. And it was a wonderful weekend, man. Yeah,
I will say it was pretty cool too. You had 2 or 3 that got saved. Yeah. So what was that like as a student pastor? Again, coming to this event, like, I don't mean to continue to like underplay it or downplay it, but I just know from a humanistic mindset, it's hard to trust people sometimes.
Yeah. So like, dude, let's be honest, man. It's the same thing. Like, you go to camps and you go to you go to these conferences and stuff like that, and the Lord like woos these kids through these things. And I, on one hand, I was like super excited to lead these kids to Christ and like walk through what this really means.
Yeah.
You know, like we're not making an emotional decision. Like our faith is not built on emotionalism, although we might become emotional. Sure. Like we're not, things are not based on emotionalism. So I can't be dependent on like knowing that the Lord's there for me for when I cry. You know what I'm saying? Like I got to have the faith to know the Lord's there for me at all times.
Yeah.
And so not just when I'm emotional. And so, like, I kind of got to walk through these things with them, which was amazing. But on the other side, there's this, like, humanistic side of me, this carnal side of me that's like, man, I've been preaching the gospel for months. These kids, I ain't done nothing. Like, I've been preaching the gospel for months. And but it's like, you know what, man? Throw them seeds, and the Lord will bring the harvest whenever He desires it to happen. So, you know, that's the side of me. I'm like, I'm being real with you, man. I'm like, I'm super happy, but at the same time, I'm like, come on.
Y'all could have done this sooner.
Come on, man. Yeah, you know, that's like I tell the kids, you don't have to wait till camp to raise your hand.
Right.
Come on, let's get out of that mindset where I got to be away from things. You know, we went to that D Now not too long ago, and man, Justin Graves killed it. He killed it. But he said something that really like I felt weird about it at first, but the more and more I reflect on it, I'm like, man, it's so true. And it's along these lines. It's like, he said, you don't need more of the Holy Spirit. You need less of you. He's like, you know, there's not more of the Holy Spirit at this D Now. There just happens to be less of you.
That's true.
And I'm like, you know, that's like something that we know to be true, but it's hard to articulate that. And so that's kind of the idea I have about like, you know, we kind of shed who we are when we walk into these things. And my hope and my goal is that I can help these students see that, man, that doesn't have to be a once a year thing, you know?
I think it's, for me growing up and attending, you know, church all the time. And, but you know, with student summer camps and stuff like that, it was when you had less distractions from like your normal everyday routine. I mean, Wednesday nights, Sunday nights are great as well, but it's kind of in that week of, you know, going to school and your same routine or whatever. But when you dedicate a weekend or a conference or a week or whatever without the distractions, you know, that's when I, you know, ashamedly would be more willing to express myself or, you know, raise my hand or really, you know, get into the spirit or whatever. But it's just tough what students have to deal with. And, you know, I thought it was tough and it was, but it seems like there's so many distractions now. It's just like catching all their attention. And, but I like what he said. That's so true. It's less of me. So.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's John 3:30, I think, right? More of him, less of me.
Yeah.
So that's one of the 116. That's one of the 116 crew, Lecrae.
Yeah.
He used to have a song or something about that, I think.
I'm terrible
Maybe
with
not.
like
It's been a while.
specific scriptures. I can tell you the whole thing, but I can't tell you like where it is from, which is awful.
It happens to everybody.
Second book of
What
James.
kind of Christian are you? Are you serious?
It's from Hezekiah.
Start making stuff up.
Habakkuk.
So good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going hell on that one.
Well, I do want to ask this because this is kind of more of a deeper, serious question. You know, me and Josh maybe kind of hit on a little bit last month, but being from the same church, you know, we kind of may have the same beliefs towards it. But I do want to ask, you know, somebody from a different church and then just somebody who's seen, you know, just kind of grown up in different churches and been around different denominations. What are your thoughts on like denominational lines and the importance of unity? And like, what are some ways you think we can get past that division that I think a lot of people may not want to admit is actually really there?
Yeah. So if you don't mind, may I kind of dive off into this by looking at some scripture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this what you were going to share earlier?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm actually preaching at a youth conference this weekend in Gulf Shores.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
My
so-
man's making it.
Man, where's my popper?
It was the second one.
Yeah, and so I was looking through these scriptures, and this is where I'm going towards. But like, we all know the story of the woman at the well, the Samaritan woman. But what I love about that story is that it starts off and it says that Jesus had to go from Judea to Galilee, right? Well, if we look at it in our ways, it's like I need to go to Laurel to Hattiesburg. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's between Laurel and Hattiesburg? Ellisville. All right. Well, in the Jewish culture of that time, they would go like through Taylorsville to get to Hattiesburg. You know what I'm saying? They would go around Ellisville. No shame to Ellisville. I'm just using this as an example. Just an illustration.
We don't like Ellisville around.
Shout out to Ellisville.
Just an illustration.
Shout out to Ellisville.
Yeah,
Shout out to Ellisville.
So they did so they could avoid Samaria. And that's because of the hatred for the Samaritans in the background behind that. They thought of them as less than dogs.
Yeah.
But what I love about that story is that Jesus said he needed to go from Judea to Galilee and needed to go through Samaria. It's because he needed to go speak to a specific person. Like he had someone to go meet. He had someone to redeem and to restore. And it's like, I feel like we do that. Like we want to go from Judea to Galilee. We want to go from Laurel to Hattiesburg, but we want to go the long route to avoid these group of people. When I'm like, Jesus is like, no, like go to those people.
Yeah.
Go to those people. Like we want to avoid people or avoid denominations like they're the plague.
Yeah.
You know? And it really it's something I'm pretty passionate about, because I just can't stand the idea like if you're not an associate of this, then you can't do this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're on the wrong party. It's like, I think of it in a political way, like if people are like, you're this or this. And I'm like, why? Why? For me, it's like your identity's not in Christ. Your identity's in a denomination. And that is a distraction from what God's wanting you to do in your life.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that like rudely. It is abrupt, but I don't mean that rudely. You know what I'm saying?
No,
I think that's the reality. Now, if there was doctrinal differences that we had, and I'm sure we might have some because we're different people, we could conversate about that.
Yeah.
Like those doctrinal differences are not going to be about core gospel beliefs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, but even if we did have core gospel beliefs that were indifferent, like I still feel like there should be some space there to have that conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
But for me, it seems as though if we differ denominationally, then I'm known as that guy from that denomination, and you're the guy from the right denomination.
Yeah.
And that's incorrect, and that's wrong. I genuinely believe that. Like we're part of the church. We're not part of the Baptist church or the Methodist church or whatever you want to say. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we're part of the church, and those differences and those lines are doing nothing but causing separation and causing hurt, and I believe real damage for what could be really done with the kingdom.
Yeah.
And it's hurtful. It brings me a lot of sorrow, actually.
Yeah, and it's one of these deals where it's actually what kind of got the vision of Together started. Is I was like, y'all, we're fighting over these issues when there's a world right outside of our church buildings that needs Jesus more than anything. And we're too busy saying like, we could go and get them, but like, would they come to this church, or would they want to go to this church, or would they want to do this? And it's like, like, what if we just came together? And no pun intended. We just got our hearts and our minds on the true thing, which is Jesus, and then go out into said world. And we don't have to say, now before we go out and we evangelize with this person, do you believe what I believe? Because if you don't, we can't tell them about Jesus. And it's like, what kind of madness is that?
Yeah.
I think me and you talked about that even when we've done missions in Europe.
Maybe.
We're talking about, I can't remember the example, but it was just like, me and Hagen, if we're going to spread the gospel to somebody, before we go and talk to them, we're not checking each other, be like, okay, what's your thoughts on speaking in tongues? What's your thoughts on baptism? What's your thoughts on this? We're just like, what, that person's lost. They need Jesus. Well, let's go. This is like an emergency conversation we have to have.
Right.
What did the woman at the well go and say when she went back to her family, those people in Samaria, the people that rejected her? I mean, why was she at the well at lunchtime anyway? Like, she went back and she didn't say, look at these theological concepts that he was just laying me out. She said, there's this man, and he told me everything about my life. And so think of the vulnerability she had to share with saying, like, look, there's a reason why I've been separating myself from y'all, but now I'm coming to you, to tell you about this man named Jesus. And so like, man, there's a student of mine who no longer attends our youth group, and I'm no hard feelings about that. Like, I told this person and I told the new youth pastor, man, I could care less if they are a part of our ministry. I just care that they're at church.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And and I'm not trying to puff myself up at all, man. I just genuinely, that's my heart. I'm not trying to create numbers. I'm trying to, in my youth group, I'm trying to create disciples.
Yeah.
And so if that person is able to do a better job at that, so be it, man. You know, different denominations, different church, different whatevs. As long as we're preaching Jesus and that person is, then I'm cool with it. You know what I'm saying? I'm cool with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a good friend. His name's Ryan Casey. He's a student pastor up in Illinois right now. We went to high school together, actually. He's at a Baptist church there, and I hopped on a Zoom call with him last week and really just kind of asked him some of this same stuff, just about the mindsets and denominational stuff. And one thing he says, a lot of it may be generational. And, you know, it's not everything. But then he also said, and you kind of hit on this earlier, it was like, a lot of different denominations have different, like, smaller beliefs and things, and we tend to focus so much more on those that it really messes up, like, our big belief in Jesus. And it's like, if we could just get out of the mindset of trying to figure out and focus so much on, like, these few little things, like, let's just focus on this one big thing. Like, how much more will we be able to reach the world? And once we are connecting hearts in that one big thing, it creates space for us to talk and discuss the little things. You know what I'm saying? Like you develop that relationship.
We develop a relationship. You don't want to hear me out.
Right.
There's no relationship between us. How are you supposed to hear me out? Like, it's like you go to your family's house for Thanksgiving, and, you know, there's that same uncle every year that's going to preach his politicized conversation, but you tolerate it because you're family. You know what I'm saying? Like, you hear him out, and you're like, all right, you know, I don't really see that, but it's whatever. You're allowed your own opinion. It's like, but if you just didn't know this guy, you wouldn't tolerate that. You'd be done with it. You'd be done with it. You'd mute that guy out.
Right.
It's like, once we build this relationship between each other, then we can conversate about these things. And if we're really genuine in our relationship, I might have my opinion swayed from. And I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
You prove to me biblically your concept and your reasoning of why you think that, and I am fine with changing my opinion.
I'll say too, I think that's kind of a danger zone as well. Like, we kind of project these beliefs and things on people who have different beliefs than us. You know, we don't develop that relationship, but it's like, sometimes we don't even get a chance. We don't even give somebody a chance. It's like, we don't even give, what am I trying to say? We don't even give ourselves a chance to know them.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
because they're outside the camp.
Yeah. So it's just like, how much good is that doing?
Yeah.
And what's crazy too is I go to Agape, which is a non-denominational church, but being that I grew up in the Southern Baptist church, most all of my beliefs are Southern Baptist. Like, and like you were talking about earlier, you know, you grew up Church of Christ, you grew up, was it Pentecostal? Non-denominational.
It's very charismatic.
And so now you're at a Congregational Methodist church, but you've got backgrounds that's different, and it's I think it's just because, you know, we read the Bible and had this radical life change where we started following Jesus, and that kind of started to change everything else, and we didn't put a denomination to it.
See, that's it. Like, that's my heart right there, man. Too often we allow tradition to form our theology.
Yeah.
And our theology is based off of whatever camp I'm involved with.
Yeah.
John Calvin's camp, you know, I'm an Arminian or a Calvinist, or, you know, I'm more strictly and whatever it is, you know. And I'm like, and what the sad thing is the people that are that way are the people that preach about proper exegeses. And I'm like, it's ridiculous because we're making theological gymnastics to go from here to here, so that way you can apply your theology to the Bible instead of applying the Bible to your theology.
Right.
And I'm like, it hurts my heart, honestly, man. Like, I want to have conversations with those folks because I'm not acting like I'm like some like profound theologian, not at all. But I try my hardest to not read my theology into the Bible, but read the Bible and gain my theology. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
and I think tradition, which if you're a history guy, and I know you are, tradition, and let's go back to the 1400s. Tradition gets in the way of God a lot.
Yeah.
Hence why Martin Luther did the things he did. So I think we should be aware that sometimes just because our denomination says this is the right way does not necessarily mean that this is the right way. And we need to be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't think in any way we're saying like us three are right and everybody else is wrong.
Ooh.
Similar to what we talked about last week. I think honestly we're all wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
You know? And
Totally.
so if we could just get on board with just agreeing that we're both right in the fact of like we serve a Jesus that died for our sins and loves us, you know. I think if we just get on board with trying to get lost people to that instead of speaking in tongues or just going to church or all this traditional religious stuff. I mean, I just think that's when you're going to start seeing change.
Totally agree, bro.
So,
Yeah, I can't even jump into that. I was gonna go down another little rabbit hole, but I don't think we can even get there.
Yeah, I hope you understand. Like, I agree with you completely on that.
oh yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say we're kind of running low on time, and this has been great. I want to have you back on.
I'm all about it, bro.
I know. I'm just kind of inviting you back right here, but you know, I'd love to get a chance to just kind of talk some more with you about just future stuff and.
Remind me not to wear a hoodie.
Yeah, sorry, it's a little hot in here.
It's toasty. It's toasty in here.
I will say, just to kind of close it out, just talking about the denominational stuff and the division, that's one thing I do love about just the idea of together. And I wish there was a way for together to like operate under its own umbrella, because I think a lot of people do still think, oh, that's an agape thing. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that they think that. And I get why they do think that, because, you know, we go to agape and this is kind of where it started. But it was never meant to be an agape thing. It was never meant to be a Hagen and Josh thing, a Hagen and Josh and Kade thing. Mm-hmm. It was meant to be like a Jones County thing.
Yeah.
And then like forevermore after that, wherever that may be.
I shouted out together all the way in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Bro.
And now
got-
homeboy Clarence is
We
coming.
got the homeboy Clarence. Shout
all
out
the
to
way from
Clarence.
Atlanta. Shout out to the Dream Center. Atlanta
Yes,
Dream Center's doing God's
absolutely.
work in Atlanta where it's desperately needed, man.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to linking up with him when he comes too.
Dude, he's cool as a cucumber.
I mean,
Like Larry.
We're going to have to lock that up. Like Larry.
Was that the right vegetable name?
Shut
I think so.
Yeah, I think you are correct.
Gosh.
Larry.
I went to VBS as a kid.
VBS. Bible Man. Did you ever watch Bible Man?
This was Veggie Tales.
I love Veggie Tales, but did you ever watch
Bible Man's like the Avenger.
Is that the superhero
The
guy?
Christian Avenger.
That's what I thought. I was thinking,
the yellow like
The guy
lightsaber.
from Charles in Charge.
What?
Williams.
Oh, no.
I don't know.
I was not aware of Charles in Charge.
The not Charles, but his was it his brother? Whatever. I think he like went on to make some Bible hero character guy.
Okay.
What the heck?
I'll bring the facts next time.
I tell you what, we'll post on our story whatever
If you know
Brad is
what I'm
talking
talking
about.
about, you know, you comment and let us know.
Why don't you
I
Google
love
like a picture of that and then
Okay,
we'll
I'm on
edit it
it
in
right
the
now.
video we post it.
Yeah, no, for sure we will.
But
We'll have a shout out to Brad, little segment on the
yeah,
story.
we will. So
Let him explain.
that's pretty much the time we have, Kade. I appreciate you coming on and
Bro, thank you guys for having me on.
yeah.
It means a lot. I was watching you guys first podcast, unlike my intern Shay. And
yeah, Shay's never going to
Straight
see
up.
this.
What is that?
Shay is never going to. Tyler may
guys are
watch
doing
it,
a podcast?
maybe. Shay, in 3 years, when you want to watch this, what's up? I mean,
No, for real, dude. Those two guys, well, guys and girls, Shay and Tyler are the absolute dynamite.
Oh yeah.
It's such a blessing for our ministry, and the Lightroom wouldn't be what it is without them. So I want them to know that publicly.
shout out
Yeah.
to Shay, shout out to
Yeah.
Tyler.
But yeah, man, I'm just super thankful to be here with you guys.
Of course,
Yeah,
of
grateful.
course. I don't think there was anyone else we could have had here. When we started this whole thing, we were like, so as far as guests go, we got Kade week 2.
Yeah, in fact, that was already a lot.
And then we're like, all right, the rest of the calendar's pretty empty, but we got to make sure Kade gets
Yeah.
on here. For sure, man.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
But this has been good, man. I appreciate it. Look forward to you coming back on.
Me too, bro.
You know, and so we do like one a month, so it may be a little bit, but
That's
we'll
what it
get you
is.
back.
Let's throw out the challenge.
Okay.
Let's get every one of the Lightroom kids in here. Every single one of them.
Oh my
I
god.
want Hunter and Dylan with boxing gloves.
I don't think you do.
I don't think I do.
That can
I
kinda be our
recorded that
intro.
video from y'all's first YouTube, first podcast,
Mhm.
and I was like, I got to show Hunter and Dylan this.
Bro. Wild. Absolutely wild. But yeah, we'll be back.
We will be back next month for episode 3.
Yes.
You can find us on the Together Talk Spotify and the Together YouTube page. So y'all feel free to follow. Stay connected, and
Beam me up.
that's pretty
Shout out
much
to
it.
Brad.
Shout out to Brad.
Beam me up.
That's it. See you guys.
Bye, guys.